Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, the Battle of Ontario is all the way back after Ottawa slapped a 5-3 win over the Maple Leafs on Saturday night.
And we have friend of the show from Sportsnet, Kyle Bukauskas, on to break it all down.
That and more on a packed edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 979 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller in the South Florida swamps. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today's episode is Monday, February 12th, and Pilsy, we are starting with the most contentious topic coming out of the weekend.
Let's get into it.
Danger Flutes was missing on Saturday night. The Senators came out to hell's bells.
Yeah, certainly a change of direction. I think that's one of those things where when you have a banger like Danger Flutes, and don't get me wrong, Hell's Bells, fine song, AC/DC, gets people going, nothing wrong with that. But can you top Danger Flutes? Ask the hundreds of people in the postcast after a Sens win. The answer is no. No, you cannot top it.
Dun, 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 dun. So good. It's so good. So hopefully it's a one-off. I have a feeling it might not be, but people are very up in arms about it, and I am too, because I have a very strong affinity with Danger Flutes. And especially, you bring Lyndon Slewage back. It just feels like Lyndon Slewage and Hell's Bells just don't have the same oomph to it that they do with Danger Flutes. But my goodness, by the way, Lyndon Slewage, not only does he still have it, he might be better than ever. There's nothing better than a Saturday night with Lyndon Slewage on a one anthem game. There's really nothing like it.
Yeah, especially for the Battle of Ontario. You got Jacques Martin behind the bench as well. Like, just talk about nostalgia. You love to see it. But Ross, one thing I will say, obviously, I'm with you. I would love for Danger Flutes to remain there. But if they take it away, it'll hit so much sweeter in the postcast when we vibe.
The postcast is available after every single Ottawa Senators games, where we are as unbiased as you would expect from a show called Locked On Senators. Hey, anything else happened Saturday night? I mean, Josh Norris got off a 15-game goal drought. That was pretty sweet.
Yep. Shane Pinto had a nice night. 3 points. You got to love that.
3 points. Not bad. Eunice
Corpusalo. Yep.
Huge first period, especially.
I'm trying to think, Ross, for all the Leafs fans that are tuning into this episode, if there's something they would like. Did Morgan Rielly have a good game?
I don't know. He's the only defenseman on the Leafs whose name I know. Maybe Giordano. I remember him playing with a wood stick, though.
Yeah, true. Well, he played back in Ryan Reeves' day when the code was all intact. Now the code is just thrown out the window. If you can't cross-check a guy in the face, is it even hockey?
You might have to build bigger arenas if they took out fighting. But look, we absolutely love the battle coming back. I tweeted out at Sens Central. I said, can we please get some animosity going between these two teams? And we get into it a lot with Kyle, but just to build on it a little bit, was there any doubt it would be Ridly Greig right in the middle of it?
And I just love that. Like, that's the type of move. And in my brief appearance on the postcast, I mentioned it. Like, that just goes to show you how comfortable Ridly Greig is in the NHL. Like, if you're a guy that's, a fringe player, maybe you don't do that because you don't want to cause any ripples. But Ridly Greig, he's not causing ripples. He's not causing waves, not tidal waves. He's making a tsunami all over the hockey world here. Little wave knowledge there. My time in Florida, I'm getting to know the waves a little better here. But it's just it's one of those emphatic exclamation points on a game that
it's an F you to all the Leaf fans that invade the building. Like, there's no two ways around it. I bet you if that's a game against Anaheim Thursday night, take the Glebe Central Pub shuttle, there's no chance that he's winding up for a slap shot from the top of the crease.
Yeah, and like, look, I get it. Leafs fans are probably really triggered right now because you don't want to score a goal on an empty net too hard. And our sympathies, like, that must be really difficult to deal with, having the puck go into an empty net that hard. And then you get the people on Twitter being like, well, if you played hockey, you know that that's the correct response to this. Hockey is the only sport in the world where if you have an issue with something, all you got to do is say, I didn't like that. We're dropping the gloves, and I'm going to see how many times I can punch you in the face and hope you punch me in the face less times. You can do that. Why would Morgan Rielly's reaction be a cross-check? And why would then Leafs fans, coaches, players double down on that being okay? I don't, like you mentioned it, Ross. As the Locked On Senators podcast, we are unbiased towards the Ottawa Senators. We're not going to be biased here. We don't do that. Obviously. But there's a million other ways you could settle that. And that is, you got to get that out of the game. And then for Leafs fans saying, oh, come on, you're overreacting. He hit him in the shoulder. You might want to get your eyes checked there, because
my favorite, there's certain people who are saying he hit him in the top of the shoulder. Well, top of the shoulder and the neck are connected. A little anatomy lesson.
Brandon Piller, doctor, I will say that area of the body is the head. That is where your head is. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those interesting situations where if you, each side is going to argue what's bias for them. But I think the general hockey consensus of the world is on the side here. Yeah, what a classless move by Ridly Greig, scoring onto the empty net goal when, who knows, maybe Martin Jones was there. We just couldn't see him.
Shout out to @Yashin's agent for the tweet. We pulled it up. Sens Buzz posted this on his Instagram. After the game, Martin Jones, who he of the fame of being so bad that the San Jose Sharks tanked from Western Conference Final to the Sens drafting Tim Stützle because of it.
Thank you,
Martin Jones, I almost bought a Jones Sens jersey, number 31. Or maybe number 3 would be more appropriate for the draft pick that ultimately ended up for Ottawa. But he said that was a stupid thing to do there by their guy at the end. And Yashin's agent said maybe Greg couldn't tell the difference between Martin Jones and an empty net. So a nice little kind of FU match there. Great tweet. All sorts of great tweets going around on social media at Sens Central, of course, right in the thick of it. Even though now I'm just posting and allowing that to do the work. I'm no longer going back and forth because you really can't get through people's skulls sometimes. So you know what? It's a ton of fun. And look, this is what the Battle of Ontario should be. I was actually getting sick of Leaf fans being like, oh yeah, like I like certain players on Ottawa. No, let's get the hate turned all the way up. We've got it with Montreal. We got it with Detroit. Now Toronto. Maybe one day we could get back to that with Buffalo, because then I don't want any team in the Atlantic Division to like the Ottawa Senators. And by the way, Sens record against the Atlantic Division is absurd. It's just another one of these weird stats this season where the Senators against the Western Conference have definitely the worst record in the National Hockey League. But against their own division, they dominate what Toronto's record is. Ottawa's 2-0 against Montreal, 2-1 against Detroit. They're 3-1 rather against Toronto.
Ross, and that's it. That's the finale. Like, what a way to cap off the Battle of Ontario like that.
Hilarious. It really is. And look, we're going to find out tomorrow, in-person hearing for Morgan Rielly in New York. And I mean, you can suspend him for more than 5 games because it's an in-person hearing. I think 6 is probably the number, because look, and even a Leaf fan I saw posted it. The cross-check that David Perron gave Artem Zub and the cross-check that Morgan Rielly gave Ridly Greig. What is it about Senators? Like, I almost want to be, what is it? Sedin isn't Swedish for punch me in the face. Wasn't that what Brian Burke said in the playoffs? Yeah. That famous quote. It's like, wearing a Senators logo doesn't mean, hey, cross-check me in the head when you get upset. Like, it is getting a little bit kind of presumptuous that you can ride your stick up like that twice now against Ottawa. David Perron had no prior suspensions in the NHL and was a respected veteran in the league. Morgan Rielly, very similar. Look, I love the way Morgan Rielly plays. He's one of the Leafs that I hate the least. But look, you got to control your stick, and you can't. A league that's trying to get rid of headshots, that's the definition of one. So we'll see what he gets. It's in person. Anything, I think I said on the postcast as well, anything above 2, I think is fair. You get 1 game because you get a 5 in a game misconduct, and there's 5 seconds left in the game. So you're serving that game the next one.
No, I'm a little different on this one, Ross. Like, if this was not an in-person hearing, I think we riot. Like, that's just, it's insane that happens when you, like I mentioned, you have so many other ways that you can deal with that other than that. And yeah, Leafs fans, first off, hello again. But I hope you're happy with that result. And I hope you're just as tough as Reeves and Keefe are in the media, being like, that was the correct response. Because have fun playing without one of your top defensemen when you're battling for a wild card spot. Not a position you want to be in. And Ross, speaking of Sheldon Keefe, the quotes that are coming from him, like Chris Johnson just tweeted out, he says, I think there's a history of events happening in Toronto with the Leafs getting more attention, more hype. They tend to lead to something as this.
Oh my God. Well, you know what this is. It's a coach who's hanging on by a thread. And I know Leaf fans are going to be quick to defend him right now in this situation. We've seen all you guys calling for his head all season long. This is a coach saying, man, it's almost like DJ Smith, where he's like, there's no way he's going to keep his team accountable in this situation. Because it's like, what's he going to say? I don't think our player should have done that. That's him writing his own resignation letter. There's no chance. He has to do this. And I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, Ross, but I think I would just try to steer away from it rather than say, oh, it's because we're the most popular team in the league that a cross-check to the face at the end of the game is getting this attention. Why doesn't everybody talk about something else?
Mark Mathot will join us on Wednesday to discuss. He loves it from all sides. Frankly, I do too. Look, we play our character well in Locked On Senators. Of course, in the postcast, we're going to be calling, kick him off the tour, Gary. A little Shooter McGavin for you there. Like, of course we're going to play that role. I love it. From an entertainment standpoint, anything that gets more rivalries into the game is great for the sport. Ridly, even if he was 100% okay after that cross-check, yeah, he's going to milk it. There's no question. But all in all, it's great entertainment. The Battle of Ontario is all the way back, and I'm looking forward to talking about this a little bit after the break with Kyle Bukauskas. We also get into, his travel schedule's wild, with his thoughts on Jacques Martin. Great conversation coming up with Kyle. And then after the break, we will look at Zack MacEwen being placed on waivers this afternoon, why that means Anton Forsberg is ready to go, and when should Anton Forsberg get into a game? A quick look ahead at the week ahead. And then tomorrow on Locked On Senators, I want to get more into the Shane Pinto, Ridly Greig combination and a game day preview. The Senators, look, nothing's easy in the NHL, but there's no easier week than the Senators are about to have. At home against Columbus and Anaheim. And then I can't remember where they're playing on Saturday, Pillsy.
Ross, don't do this to me. I'm trying to enjoy my vacation. I will deal with that later.
All right, up next, Kyle Bukauskas from Hockey Night in Canada. You saw him on the broadcast on Saturday, and he's coming up next with phenomenal hair right here on Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. Guys, if you want to win 100 times your money, you got to try playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially when it comes to daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests, hockey contests, and what I love about the Sleeper app is they got the group chat. You can talk smack to your buddies, let them know you got a big week, and there's so many stats to choose from. So if you're looking at stats like goals, well, you're going to want to pick Ridly Greig, obviously. If you're looking at stats like penalty minutes, suspensions, game misconducts, you can go for Morgan Rielly. There's so many different ways that you can play this if you want to have your picks do well on Sleeper, and 100 times payouts. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Only available for our friends in the States for now.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub. Shout out to the Glebe Central Pub. They had 2 sold-out buses to and from the game on Saturday night. They always have you covered to and from the CTC. Go to glebecentralpub.com and check out their shuttle service. $17 to and from the CTC. They've got one this Thursday against the Anaheim Ducks. It's the best way to get into the action without having to worry about the traffic or bringing your keys. Just worry about having a great time, and you will be transported from the Glebe Central Pub at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe, to the CTC and back. Not only are they your premium transportation service to and from the CTC, they're also just an awesome neighborhood pub. They've got great food, awesome drinks, live music every Saturday in the month of February. It's always a good vibe at the Glebe Central Pub. Our friend Alex Adams reached out to me on Twitter. He said, man, just on your recommendation, I'm at the Glebe Central Pub and I'm having a blast. And you can too. Go use the dartboard. Go watch sports. Everything is for you at the Glebe Central Pub. So go check them out today, guys. Glebe Central Pub, 779 Bank Street. The vibes are free at the GCP. Now here's our interview with Sportsnet's Kyle Bukauskas. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest, a friend of the show making his 3rd appearance to the Locked On Senators podcast. You get to see him on Hockey Night in Canada with Sportsnet. It's Kyle Bukauskas. Welcome back. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, good, guys. Good to be on with you. And I feel the timing is, shall we say, appropriate, given what happened over the weekend in the nation's capital. That was a hell of a night. How you guys doing?
We're fantastic. Your boots on the ground for that game. We're going to get into everything. But first, congratulations is in order. I see your left hand's a little heavier than last time we got to see you. Yes. And how's the season been so far for you? It's a lot of travel and a lot of great work from our standpoint.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you. It's been good. It's been kind of a funny year where, just this last weekend, that was the first weekend I've actually been here in Ottawa. Just the way our production schedule worked out, I've been elsewhere every other Saturday night. So it was my first Saturday night since, I guess, the first weekend of October that I went to sleep in my own bed by the time all was said and done. So it's been good. It's going by quick. January was really busy. I felt I was barely home at all. We did a little trip down to Mexico while the Sens had their bye week last week, just to hit the reset button and ready for the kind of the unofficial second half of the year to keep going, because as you know, it always gets going quick now. Like trade deadline will be here before we know it, and then it's playoff time. So all good.
What's the most difficult part about being on the road so much, Kyle? Obviously it's exciting. You get to travel, you get to cover hockey, but I'm sure there's some downsides to it that maybe the average fan wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah, I feel so much of it is like, what stage of like your life are you at, like almost on the personal side, right? So when I first started, my girlfriend and I were dating, but like we lived in separate cities. So regardless, I was always, coming home to an empty condo. So I could have been on the road for 2 weeks straight, a month straight, whether it was that or 2 nights. It didn't make much difference to me, but certainly as you go on, we're married now. We don't have any kids, but we've got a dog that I love to death. So I miss both of them, when I'm gone for an extended period. And certainly colleagues that I've worked with over the years, they've got families and kids doing other things, and how much, they miss on that side was quite eye-opening when I kind of saw it firsthand from there. So, really, as I say, where you are at in your life dictates a lot of those feelings around the travel and just routine. Like I've kind of learned to accept that not a lot about this line of work is routine, but just stuff around, your eating habits when you're, home cooked meals versus eating out all the time. Like, how do you balance that to kind of try to stay somewhat healthy? Finding time to go get a workout in or whatever, helps you kind of feel fresh as the season wears on. Like it can be tough to fit all that in as the schedule gets thrown into a bit of a blender. So trying to stay on top of all things and still have the energy to do a game when, the red light on the camera turns on. That's kind of the biggest challenge, because it's more of a mental grind than anything, but it certainly can feel like a grind, even though we're not playing a shift or anything. We're just watching, but all of the fatigue with everything I just mentioned can add up.
Well, one thing we know Kyle always has time for is getting the Johnny Bravo hairdo going, because we absolutely love it. Best hair in television. And we appreciate, even for a podcast, he's getting it all flowing perfectly. And that's something I think maybe not a lot of people understand, because you are traveling so much, but you are an Ottawa guy based in Ottawa now, which is great, and we appreciate it. So you got a vibe around the city of the Ottawa Senators. And of course, like I mentioned, you were in the rink on Saturday. How did that atmosphere compare to maybe some other Battle of Ontario's that you've seen in years past?
Yeah, it was. I credit Ian Mendez. I think he hit the nail on the head. We were at the rink in the morning, and he felt that this had the potential to be one of the more Leaf fan heavy Battle of Ontario's, because it was the only Saturday meeting of the two teams all year. Right, the other two in Toronto were Wednesday nights, and then the one prior in Ottawa was a Thursday night. And the fact just where it fit on the calendar, early February, it was kind of a layup for, I imagine, a lot of Christmas gifts of, here you go. Leaf fans are getting tickets to go to Ottawa February the 10th. So it certainly did feel that way. Like there was, our little perch there pregame just at the top of the 100 level, right near where, Claire Hanna and Mark Mathot do their thing for the TSN shows. You can just see the amount of blue all around that half of the ice to watch warm up. So you knew it was going to be one of those games, we see that a lot, of course, in the nation's capital when Toronto comes to town. But I just love, the Saturday night, like, you just felt there was a different energy in the building, and of course you'd love, for the Sens to be in a different position where they are in the standings, so the game felt like it had maybe a little more meaning to it. But once the game started, then it felt very meaningful, regardless of where the teams were at in their respective seasons. So, of course, with the way things finished between Ridly Greig and Morgan Rielly, it was all bets were off at that point, and all hell had broken loose in a sense. So it was an interesting kind of feeling leaving the rink that night, going, all right, the biggest story. We just watched kind of what will be the biggest story in hockey, very, very likely here over the next few days. Just happened at the Canadian Tire Center on Saturday. So it was just a fun night. Of course, you never like to see someone get cross-checked in the head. Thankfully, Ridley seems to be okay. Practice today. But those are nights where you leave, feeling the adrenaline still takes a little bit longer to wear off afterwards than maybe compared to other games.
Hope you're enjoying our chat with Kyle. We'll get right back to it. But first, a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
Yes, Ross, a word from our friends over at FanDuel. Look, the big event, the Super Bowl, is over. Hope everybody had a blast watching that and getting in on all the fun prop bets and other bets you can do with FanDuel. But now let's stick to hockey. We got basketball as well, and new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and NHL games. You got quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So if you want to cash in on the Sens being hot right now, you think you're going to also ride the wave of this big week, Sens on a 3-game winning streak, and some very beatable teams coming up, you got to do it on the best sports book app in North America. I'm talking about FanDuel. So go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot today. Just hammer a clapper into the empty net with FanDuel at FanDuel.com/lockedon, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Shawarma Palace. If you're hungry, you're in Ottawa, Shawarma Palace is the place for you. You can either visit them at any of their 7 locations, or you can also exclusively order them online at Uber Eats. So go check them out. It's literally my favorite place. Has been since I was a kid going to elementary school. I'd always try to make my parents stop at Shawarma Palace. They're the one place that's been a consistent shawarma stop in Ottawa since 1997. They started with one location, and with the help of community and love and a passion for hockey, Shawarma Palace has now expanded where you can find them at Bank and Hunt Club. You can find them in the heart of Centertown, right off of the Queensway at Bank and Gladstone. You can find them all over the city, and for good reason. They've got delicious shawarma. The sandwiches are perfectly toasted right on the flat top. They've also got the platters, which, good luck eating all that in one seating. It's fresh, it's great, it's delicious. It's everything you could imagine yourself being fuel-filled at Shawarma Palace. They believe that when you buy great food, you should also get a big portion. And that's why Shawarma Palace is my favorite. Every time I'm in Ottawa back at home, I'm at Shawarma Palace. So go visit them today. Go eat like a royal. Go eat at Shawarma Palace. All right, now back to our chat. Here's Kyle Bukauskas.
I feel like just to kind of add to the emphasis of how this game had so much more of a battle than the other ones, we've been calling it the Ballet of Ontario this year, Kyle, but safe to say this was back to the Battle of Ontario. It's the finale game between the Leafs and Sens. Like you mentioned, all the Leafs fans going to the CTC. This is the first game for the Sens coming back from the break, so there's a lot of energy, a lot of emotion there. And I just feel like it's neither one of these teams wanted to lose this game because that would tie the season series up at 2-2. The Leafs probably aren't that happy about splitting the series with a team that's in 28th in the league. And the Sens players are looking like, hey, this is our barn. There's all these fans here, so they want to get the emotion going. And I feel like that's part of the reason why Ridly Greig does that, right? Like I don't think before the game, Ridly Greig is thinking, okay, if I have a chance to have an empty netter, I'm going to take a clapper at the hash marks. I don't think that's his plan going into this, but you feel the energy, you feel the noise, you feel the passion, and he does that. And it's one of these things where it's hilarious because if you flip the jerseys on that situation, you probably flip the opinions of hundreds of thousands of people in an instant like that. But I have a hard time thinking, and I like to get your opinion on this, that the way an empty net goal is scored provokes that kind of reaction in a sport where you are allowed to drop your gloves and punch a guy in the face if it's agreed upon. Like, I think that's the biggest issue here. I think Sens fans are like, look, if that happened to us, you don't want to see that. Is Ridly Greig showboating that goal? Absolutely. But there is a million other responses that Morgan Rielly can take other than going up and cross-checking him directly in the face. I think that's where it doesn't. And then you get the people on Twitter, well, if you played hockey, you would know that warrants a cross-check to the face. No, I think if Morgan Rielly decides, you know what, I didn't like that, really, you're about to get a piece of this, let's go. And then he has a fight, I got no problem with that. None at all. That's totally fine. That's how hockey is played. If you don't like something, you can police the game yourself by fighting. But it's the cross-check that just it isn't appropriate at all and warrants the type of suspension that it looks like Morgan Rielly's going to get here. So what is your opinion on how Morgan Rielly reacts in that moment with his decision?
Yeah, it's the great irony, isn't it? Right? Like, again, if he just dropped his gloves and went to go grab him, and whether Ridley, accepted the fight or not, like, they both would have been sent off. There would have been no NHL player safety involvement, and Rielly and whoever else from the Leafs wouldn't be heading to New York this week to fight their in-person hearing. But because it was a cross check, it's a different matter. So I'm with you. Like, yeah, if I was playing and an opposing player did that, like, I'd be pissed off. I wouldn't like it. But you're right. When you get to the level of, a cross check to the face, there's a reason why player safety has intervened. I know our panel talked about it after the game. I know there was mixed reaction on how they weighed in on it. But even like, Kevin Bieksa said, where he's going, I understand Morgan Rielly's upset about it, but a cross check to the head are the kind of plays we're trying to get out of the game. So that's why, he's potentially facing a lengthy suspension. And my initial reaction as soon as it happened was, okay, is this going to be more or less than 5 games? I thought it was severe enough that this wouldn't be one where it would be, we're talking, 1 or 2 games potentially that he could be missed. And now that becomes, the big story for Toronto, because it hasn't been a perfect season for them by any stretch. And now you are potentially missing your best defenseman for more than just a small handful of games. So they got that to worry about as well. So that was my feeling. Yeah, you're right. And it's totally, if you reverse the roles, right? If it's Max Domi playing the role of Ridly Greig and Thomas Chabot the role of Morgan Rielly, the reactions are 100% opposite on either fan base. It's whatever lenses you view the game through, which is what makes this rivalry and sport in general so entertaining. But you can't deliver a cross check to a guy's head like that. You can't do that. And so I know, like, I was seeing some of the Leaf quotes come out of their practice today, and they're doubling down defending their player, which absolutely, they have the right to do. Ridly Greig wasn't made available to the local media here in Ottawa today, so we still haven't had a chance to get his take on it all. But yeah, when it comes to the level of a cross check to a guy's face, especially after, like, it's not a battle in the corner that kind of got out of hand. Like, the play effectively was stopped. The goal was scored. So there, you can't make that's a hockey play argument. It was a stoppage in play and an incident, a reaction that I think, appropriately has warranted player safety weighing in.
I would have liked the old Matt Carkner response, even like where he went at, I think it was Brian Boyle in the corner in that playoff series. He was going after Erik Karlsson. He says, look, whether you're going to fight me or not, like, you're getting a few shots. I get, and it's almost redundant at this point, but it's just the way the cross-check rides up and, in the moment, and Leaf fans are probably rallying around it. And he's got to hope, Morgan Rielly, that the team will too, because he's their best defenseman, and right now it's not particularly close. So if he's out for an extended period of time, and they're in a battle right now themselves, I think they might be looking back at this as maybe either something that they rally around and they can make the most of it, or maybe something where the 18-wheeler, as Brian Burke once said, went off the cliff. But enough about the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is Locked On Senators, and again, the vibe around the team. Of course, the last 11 games, they're 7-2-2. Many will say too little, too late, but right now, I mean, you saw it, and the reason why Ridly Greig scored that goal, Kyle, is because the Shane Pinto, Ridly Greig, and Vladimir Tarasenko line was out there in the final minute. And I love, you mentioned Ian Mendez, great friend of the show as well. The way he asked Jacques Martin after the game wasn't about Ridly Greig's shot. It was, why was he the guy who you wanted out there at that time? What have you seen, not only from Ridly Greig, but Shane Pinto in his 7 games as well? We were talking, who moves to wing? Well, it looks like they've kind of found the combination that works, having a lefty and a righty in Pinto and Greig in that position. Yeah,
I think you got to give Shane Pinto a lot of credit, don't you? Like, the fact that he's basically jumped on a moving train here, coming in halfway through the season. I think he's 6 points in 7 games.
7. Who's counting?
7 and 7 now. Right.
The last assist was a little overshadowed.
Right. Yeah. So he was 1 and 2 Saturday, right? I kept thinking he was 1 and 1. No, you're right. So a point a game guy coming out of the gate. I know it's a small sample size, and does the fatigue start to set in at some point? We'll see. I mean, obviously he's incredibly fresh that he missed the first half of the season. So with him getting up to that level right away is a huge part of it. And I thought, Ridly Greig was certainly in conversations with DJ when he was still the coach here in Ottawa. It was like him and Matthew Joseph were like his most reliable 200-foot forwards to that point in the season before things really started to go off the rails. So he had been building towards, being this type of player even before I think Jacques Martin got at the helm there. And I know there's been a few games where his minutes have been cut, and perhaps just, part of the growing process as a young player and earning the trust of a veteran coach like Jacques. But yeah, it was impressive. Like, how much time they saw in the critical moments down the stretch, that line on Saturday. But also, if you saw, like, early in the third period, Parker Kelly was getting shifts with Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris, and they were seeing a lot of time against the Matthews line. So there's another guy who, not going to score much for you and do a ton offensively, but clearly is earning more of the coach's trust to be put in some pretty, important spots to hold on to leads. So that was an impressive part for me too, and watching how the game unfolded and how Jacques utilized his lines was, Parker Kelly getting a promotion there as the bench did shorten a little bit. But that third line, it's been really, really impressive. And Vladimir Tarasenko too. We'll see what happens between now and trade deadline. He was asked about that today, and not surprised, didn't want to make it out any more than he needed to be, and downplayed the whole situation that he has. But so long as he's here, he's been a much more effective player all over the ice than, quite honestly, I would have envisioned coming in. So good on him for the way he's brought forth an effort each and every night, and how, Jacques Martin and the Sens have gone about utilizing him.
Yeah, I want to stick with Jacques Martin, Kyle, here, because you've got to cover the Ottawa Senators when DJ Smith was around. Now you got a coaching change, a very different style of coaching, and even just personality-wise, two very different coaches to deal with here. And you're in the scrums. What's it like being around Jacques with the media? It must be very interesting to see a guy of his kind of hockey experience, and you get to be right there along with him.
And Kyle,
Yeah.
how
Sorry,
old were you the last time Jacques was the head coach of the Ottawa Senators?
Yeah. Well, let's say the octaves in my voice was a lot higher back then. I'll say that.
Same here, Kyle.
Right. So it's neat to see that, he's still finding ways to impact the game. But it's interesting. Like I miss so much of that, the first part of, Jacques taking over, because the coaching change happened when they were on the road, of course, and then just weeks went by where they were home and I was elsewhere. So it's been more so just the last 2 weeks, I'd say I've been around them a little bit more. But I mean, it's interesting that obviously it's health related reasons. The fact that he's not on the ice running practice, he watches from the stands, and certainly much more, soft spoken, I think, both in the media, but also I think in talking to the players, in his interactions with them too in the meetings. And obviously, DJ was at the opposite end of the spectrum as kind of a loud, gregarious personality, and how you doing? Good morning. And it was just a way different type of guy, and how he went about things beyond just the hockey tactics. So, it's been neat to kind of learn a little bit about how he does things. As I say, I was obviously I old enough to remember Jacques Martin as the head coach of the Ottawa Senators, but certainly not old enough to have a great sense of how he operated as a coach per se versus, what he's doing now. So it's been good to just try to get to know him a little bit and kind of ask him, his thoughts on different players and, philosophy wise on the game. And, we'll see how they're able to push things here over the last stretch of the year. You mentioned how long the odds are for this team to really get back in the race because of the hole they dug here. But the fact that they seem to be finally gaining some traction, as you say, 7 wins in their last 11, is a great sign, because I was worried kind of initially after that change where you thought, oh man, is it just going to continue to get worse from here? But credit to the players and Jacques and his staff for getting things righted here, it seems, for at least the next little while.
Kyle Bukauskas is with Hockey Night in Canada, Sportsnet. You can follow him on social media, Sportsnet Kyle, 3-time recurring guest, and it's not going to be as long till we get him back on. Final question for me, Kyle. Look, 30-plus games left in the season. You mentioned the playoffs, the pipe dream. What's the number one storyline you're looking forward to for the rest of the Sens season?
Ooh, good question.
Thanks.
I just wonder how they navigate the deadline here, right? Like, this is the first year under Steve Staios and Dave Poulin and company, and so how do they go about? Who do they look at to see? No, this is still part of our plan. We envision them here long term versus who potentially could be shipped out to recoup some assets here. And I know it's not a conversation that any Sens fan wanted to be in this year again, but it is kind of the reality that they're looking at. So that to me is kind of what I'm really curious about. He's kind of led on in some of the press conferences that he's done, is that this is a fresh set of eyes. This is a management team that, as you know, didn't draft and sign this core to long-term deals. So how does he view this group, where there's been some tough moments throughout the year that he's watched, but he's also, seeing the stretch over the last 3 weeks now where they're playing much better as a group. So how he navigates between now and the deadline, and what his visions are, and the front office as a whole, their vision is in terms of how to put this team in a position come next fall that they're not in the same situation as they are right now. That's going to be an interesting one for me to watch.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how it all plays out, Kyle. It's always a treat when we get to see you on the Sportsnet broadcast, and we look forward to your next visit with Locked On Senators. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, as do I. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, Philzy. Stick taps to Kyle for joining us. What a beauty. Just a great guy. Comes on last minute, gives his take on things, and could his hair look any better?
I'm convinced he wakes up like that. He's got to. And hey, we always appreciate Kyle Bukauskas coming on the show, and this was a weekend to remember. So I'm glad we were able to get Kyle on to help us break it down.
And Kyle discussed briefly about Shane Pinto, pulling up his season stats here on YouTube. 7 points in 7 games, had his first career 3-point night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's got 3 goals, 21 shots on goal in those 7 games, including 5 on Saturday night. He's played just a shade under under 17 minutes. He played 16:56. I think most impressively to me, though, Pilsy, is his work in the faceoff dot. I know he went 9 for 10 in his debut against Philadelphia, but like he has just been so consistent for them in the dot, and he gives them that right shot option. We kept talking about how they've got all lefties down the middle. I know Casty's a righty. He gets out there, and Giroux takes a lot of draws, but as a legit top 6, top 9 centerman, he's your righty. Ridly, lefty. Norris, lefty. Stützle, lefty. Even Tkachuk takes a ton of draws as a lefty, even though he's a left winger. But man, what a treat Shane Pinto's game has been. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, Pilsy, but that contract extension ain't getting any cheaper every game that Pinto plays in the lineup. Guy played over 20 minutes in the game against the Leafs. He was the leading ice time player of all forwards for the Ottawa Senators, playing over 20 minutes. Like, he is already being relied upon as that closer. He was out there taking defensive zone draws against John Tavares in the last minute of the game. Like, you couldn't have scripted a better start to the season, not to mention these stats, and I'm going to keep saying them, Pilsy. The Senators are now 5-1-1 since Shane Pinto returned this season.
Yep.
They're 32-5-5 all time when he gets at least a point. They're 6-0-1 when he gets 2 or more points. And the team is 21-9-2 when all of Pinto, Norris, and Stützle play in a game. Like, these numbers are just improving every single time he steps out on the ice.
And he just gives justification to that third line that this team so desperately needed, right? Like, before he got here, this third line, Tarasenko was down there, wasn't working for him. Kubalik, well, it's not working for him at all. Joseph, he's too good to be down on a third line with guys that aren't getting him going, so he was elevated in the lineup. But now, arguably, this has been the most consistent producing line, or at least on a shift in, shift out basis, when you're looking at Ridly Greig, legend, with Shane Pinto and Vladimir Tarasenko. Like, they're getting it going, they're producing, and not only are they doing well offensively, but they're playing a physical game. They're tough to beat offensively. Like you mentioned, Jacques Martin, no issue putting them out there when it matters the most. And Shane Pinto, he clears it so that Ridly Greig can go on and get that breakaway. So just a great job by Shane Pinto. And I think this is one of those moments where you can look at a young athlete or even a young person, and the transition from being off the ice to being in the middle of an NHL regular season has looked pretty seamless for our guy Pinner.
It's great to see, and Shane Pinto finding a home there with Ridly Greig and Vladimir Tarasenko. We'll talk about that more on tomorrow's Locked On Senators, a game day edition. The Senators continue their current 3-game homestand against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So game day preview and that conversation will continue there. But of note today, and it's a late recording and good thing because we were assuming something might happen on waivers today, and it did. Zack MacEwen, who's been a healthy scratch the last couple of games, he is on waivers today and expected to be assigned to Belleville if he clears tomorrow at 2 p.m. This signals the return for Anton Forsberg, and we'll see what happens with Jake Sanderson, whether he's put on injured reserve retroactively to last Wednesday. Now, the good news for Jake Sanderson is he skated on his own today on Monday, so doubtful for tomorrow, I'd say, but maybe outside chance at Thursday. Hopefully by Saturday, he's back in the lineup because Artem Zub missed most of practice today with a maintenance. So hopefully he seems like he'll be good to go. You can't have both them out of the lineup, but at least if Zub's here, it could be all right. Now, the big thing on this one, though, Pilsy, is Anton Forsberg is back, but Joonas Korpisalo is playing his best, most consistent hockey as an Ottawa Senator. Basically, since I went on my rant talking after that loss where against the New York Rangers, he was just frankly not good enough, allowing 4 goals on 17 shots. His last 3 games, Pilsy, he's 3-0 with a .934 save percentage. So the question is, when do you get Anton Forsberg into a game?
Well, Ross, I think we can clearly credit you for Joonas Korpisalo's turnaround. So thank you for that. You play a big role in that. So we appreciate it. I think what I mentioned, I forget exactly how I laid it out before, but I think I'm going to stick on the same principle here. I want Joonas Korpisalo playing up against Columbus. We're going to get into it more tomorrow, obviously, but a revenge game for Korpisalo. Now, I know it'd be a revenge game for Forsberg as well, but this week you've got 1 Eastern Conference team and 2 Western teams. and you're only 2 points ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets. For a morale booster, put it all on the line and beat up on the Blue Jackets here. So I don't want to throw Forsberg into that situation. So I'm sticking with Korpisalo next game. And then I think Thursday up against the Anaheim Ducks at home, that's a perfect time to get Anton Forsberg back in the mix. Give him a couple extra days here, and then he's ready to go. Because I don't want him sitting around too long here. So I think that's how I would play it, Ross.
Okay, well, we'll find out sooner rather than later. Jacques Martin, though, speaking to the media today, didn't give any hints. We'll keep that confirmed as it comes available. Of course, tomorrow's episode where it's going to be an early drop, so get ready for that. A little back-to-back action here is a later drop today, but my goodness, the vibes are high. Look, the Senators only have 2 3-game win streaks this season heading into the one they're currently on, so make it 3 now, but they have never been able to stretch it for 4. They will have no better opportunity than at home against Columbus. Columbus is missing like half of their best players as well.
Yep.
There's no excuses for this one. I'm stamping must-win game for the Ottawa Senators. Pilsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me is I'm glad we got that animosity back in the Battle of Ontario. And I know we've said it, but all feels right again. And that's what you want. Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, Battle of Ontario in Ottawa, Leafs fans going home sad. It's a beautiful thing.
I tweeted out at 1:30 in the morning. I was just like getting into bed, and I tweeted out, I said, just thinking there are some Leaf fans that are still on their way home from going to the game. That was just on the 401. Maybe stop in Mallory Town. Maybe they're passing Belleville. You know, when they get to Whitby, you got to get the Wendy's number 6 combo.
Oh, of course. Yes,
but they were slow. They were slow and steady on their way back. Final thoughts from me, and I'm kind of mad at you that you missed this. Our guy, Pistol Pete, Oscar Pettersson, first pro North American goal he scored for the Belleville Sens. They had a wild game on Saturday night. We'll touch on that a little later in the week. Obviously, the Senators dominating the headlines here, but Belleville, huge performance in their 5-4 win over Utica. Our guy Crooker still buzzing, and you love to see Matt Sogard get back on track. He's been solid. I know Levy played that game the other night, but even since going back, Matt Sogard's been solid. He made his last game since being sent down, Pilsy, 963 save percentage, 925 save percentage, 967 save percentage in those 3 games. But yeah, for Oscar Pettersson, awesome to see him get a goal early because he hadn't scored in pro hockey this season, hadn't really been getting a lot of ice time with Rogla, so he comes over and makes an impact. Our guy Footy said he's starting to roll right now, and he has high hopes for him. So we love to see that. Pilsy, we'll get more from you on tomorrow's show. For today, though, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.